Hello everyone, welcome to another episode of the DoersCast. I'm your co-host, Mr. Gardner.
And I'm your co-host, Andrew Chang.
The DoersCast is an original series powered by entrepreneurs at Austin. This podcast is centered around small business owners and entrepreneurs who are putting actions to their ideas to achieve their dreams. These people are the ultimate doers among us, and it's our job to highlight their experiences. And today we have a very special guest. This is going to be a good one. Andrew, if you want to take it off here.
All right, guys. So today we have a very special guest. He is a social entrepreneur and the founder of Prep to Your Door. And we're actually in the headquarters of Prep to Your Door right now. But PTYD is a food delivery business that's focused on sustainability and zero waste. And Faiez here, he's also a Harvard dropout and has a passion for education reform. And one day he hopes to improve schooling in underprivileged areas across the world. He's helped scale his business up to 7 figures and has been 100% bootstrapped with no outside investment until very recently. So please welcome our very special guest, Mr. Faiez Rana.
Wow. Right. You guys got it down tight. I love it.
Yeah.
Where'd you get all that information? That was great.
We did our research on you, man. We did our research.
Love it. Awesome.
But yeah, so just to get into the everything, why don't you tell us a little bit about your story, like how you got into the whole entrepreneurship stuff?
Yeah, I think much like you guys, when I was in college, I started at University of Colorado, and I would just see the world through the lens of what do people need that they don't have or that they can't get. What frustrations. I remember freshman year, I had a lot of legal and illegal ideas. So one of them was like, I noticed nobody wanted to do laundry. So I was like, okay, if I can collect the laundry from our floor, will they pay me to do it? Everybody needed alcohol in college, so I made one friend that was over 21 that would buy, and then I would resell. So stuff like that. I was always trying to see the gaps. Luckily, as I got older, I became more ethical and wanted to focus on doing things that would improve the world. But, you know, this company was born out of, I was 23 years old, had no real experience in terms of skill set or anything outside of really internships or the little ideas that I tried to get off the ground. But this was sort of the first idea that achieved product market fit, if you will. So that wasn't in my control per se. It was more of I put out the prototype, the minimal viable product, and customers were spending their money with us. And then we tweaked it and they kept spending their money with us. We tweaked it some more, they spent more money with us. And so now we have 35 people here. We've done over 7 figures in revenue. We're raising $1 million right now. So I think it speaks to the idea of you can start wherever you're at, right?
Awesome. Yeah, man. But going into like, I know you first started this company called Dream Labs. And can you tell us a little bit more about that and like where did the idea for that come from?
Yeah, I mean, one of my side hustles in college was always tutoring. I was lucky to get a high score on SAT. Like I understood the test really well. So I would tutor a lot of kids in SAT, seniors in high school. And by that point I dropped out of CU already out of I was pissed off at the education system, right? I just thought that it wasn't giving me what I needed to be successful in the world. I thought it was judging me along lines of whether I could do good in a test, but not what value I could provide out in the world. I couldn't articulate it as such, but so I really had this deep desire to build schools. Like I wanted to build schools in sort that would foster entrepreneurship and creativity and kids being able to discover what they're good at, rather than being forced to take all these subjects just because that's the way it's always been done. So anyways, I was tutoring, and my mom had a small tutoring center, and you know, I didn't know what I was doing, so I would go and help her and do what I was doing. And one of our students that I was tutoring, her mom was a philanthropist. These were most of my students were like wealthy private school kids, right? That could afford to get, pay $2,500 to do well on the SAT. And during the refugee crisis in Syria, there was a huge orphanage with 2,000 kids that didn't have parents.
Wow.
And they were going to go build a school over there. But the reality is that how were you going to get teachers there? You would have to build all the infrastructure for 2,000 kids. They didn't have that much philanthropy behind them. And so all my SAT curriculum and such was actually online, probably on something y'all use, Canva, but it was before people used Zoom and online schooling. It was pre-COVID, it was like 2015 or whatever, I don't remember. And so we built the online school for these kids that were sitting all the way in this refugee camp in the Middle East.
That's amazing.
And I really wanted to leverage this model of wealthy private school kids paying for my time, teachers' times over here, and using the profits from that to create more learning experiences for kids in underprivileged areas, because y'all went to UT, I went to University of Colorado and Harvard. Like, these are privileges that most people, billions of people across the world, will never enjoy.
Definitely.
And honestly, even if you go to a public school in the United States, you're far ahead of billions of people in the world.
Definitely.
And so that was actually what I was trying to get funded, but it didn't work. And that was lucky. That was lucky for me, because I had to do what I could do, which was put some food in a jar and try to go sell it and build my skill set through that.
Awesome. So with the funding, so you haven't gotten any outside investment, any outside funding with Prep to Your Door. So my question is, how did you get off the ground, and compared with Dream Labs, what was different about PTYD that allowed it to succeed on its own, and as you said, with the bootstraps?
There's some really cool tools out there now that allow entrepreneurs, regardless of background, to get in the game. So, all of our revenue came through PayPal or Square. Okay? And the thing when your revenue comes through PayPal, Square, Stripe, QuickBooks, any of these things, they see your proof of revenue, and so they'll give you a loan. And then you have to pay them back, and it was 10% of revenue. Because all of our revenue was going through them, they would just take it off the top. So we just started using those until we could, get our revenues up. Because in the beginning, there was no bank that would give us a loan. And I frankly didn't have the guts to go to my family to raise investment, because they thought I was bullshitting around. They thought I was wasting my time dropping out of school. And I will say that it really pays to have good credit. And that was something I really didn't pay attention to in college, but everybody has that opportunity in college to just spend whatever you're going to spend on a debit card for $200, spend it on a credit card and pay that shit off right away. Because when the time comes to go and get an institutional loan, having good credit matters a lot. And luckily my partner had good credit. I did not have good credit. So yeah.
That's a good point about PayPal, because in the past I had sort of a side hustle with computer services, and I had got to a point where they did offer me a loan. I didn't take it though. I didn't need it at the time. But sometimes PayPal is a pain in the ass still. They hold funds and stuff at times. But definitely Yeah, that's a good point about like once you're actually doing something, you'll be surprised like what's on the other side of the door, right?
Yeah.
Because imagine you're like, man, how am I ever gonna get a loan, right? But you're just sitting there doing stuff, and you're like, man, like PayPal's gonna offer me a loan. They see I'm making money, right? But I wanted to touch on another point you made, I guess, with the Dream Labs thing, because I've seen you described as a social entrepreneur. That's what I've seen you described as at times. And I know this is often considered the hard way to do it. Like when you're trying to build a company around a cause, to solve, these large societal problems, whether it be environmentalism, education, things of that sort. There's often obstacles associated with it. So I'm just wondering, has that mainly been your experience? Would you say like, yes, it is much harder on average than if you were to just go a traditional route, building a business, around, a cause,
I think about that all the time. I mean, is your question, is it harder to be a social entrepreneur than to just
basically,
go without rules?
Pretty much, yeah.
I think about that all the time. I mean, I don't know the answer because, we stick to our values, but yeah, I think about it all the time. I was like, man, if we didn't have to stick to zero waste, like, we could ship across the country and we could do it more quickly. But we have to be really mindful of short-sightedness, right? So I guess it depends. Like, why are you getting into the game? Is it a lot of entrepreneurs get into the game to flip with the flip in mind, right? They start it to get acquired in T-minus X years, which is fine. There's that's great. That's just not what I'm trying to do. It's not that social entrepreneurship is the right thing to do. It's just the thing that motivates me.
Sweet.
So yeah, I want to get super duper all the way rich, all the way to the very tippity top. But I want to have made all that money in a way that does really, really good things. And I'm really inspired by, if you guys read history, you know that everything around us was shaped by people.
Exactly.
The microphone you're talking on, the computer, the camera, the cars outside, all of it were just passionate entrepreneurs that like had an idea and made it happen.
Yeah.
And so that inspires me. I'm like, okay, like I would love to live a life where maybe we shape how human beings live for a little while.
Sweet. Yeah, and when I brought this up with Andrew, we started talking about Elon Musk.
Yeah.
Because we're like, and then I told him, I was like, I wonder what Faiez thinks. Like, does he consider Elon Musk a social entrepreneur? Because I mean, this guy, if you look at what he's doing, like it's helping the environment. He's producing electric vehicles. Yet sometimes I don't think people think of him as a social entrepreneur. Like, and I'm not sure if it's because maybe like he's worth so much, or like Tesla is seen as like this big national company. But what's your perspective on that?
I think Elon Musk is the ultimate social entrepreneur, and I also think people get cynical about anybody that achieves tremendous amounts of success. He inspired me in a big way in terms of like how, when in my early 20s, when I was trying to figure out what I wanted to do, I would listen to his interviews, and he described how he decided what he wanted to do was he wrote down like what are the biggest problems, that not just problems but opportunities he sees in the world, right? So I think he said the internet, climate change, and space, maybe. I don't remember what the third one was. He's doing all of that. So I remember I was like, okay, let me see what I can think of, and mine was education and climate change.
Wow.
I was like, those seem like the two most pressing issues of our time. And okay, I don't have the audacity to say Elon Musk is from another planet. You know what I mean? Like,
exactly.
I'm not as smart as him, but that's okay. We all have to do something with our lives. So you never ever know where you're going to end up if you just get focused and work on what you have in front of you. You never know.
And like I feel like, in my opinion, like it's like the reason that people don't think it is because a lot of people view social entrepreneurship as like, oh, you're not like focused on making money and you're only focused on like social change and stuff like that. And like people don't think of social entrepreneurs as like people that make money, but and then when they see Elon Musk and he's like doing everything and like actually making money, then it's like, oh, like that goes against my ideas, right? But touching on that, and I saw in one of your recent Instagram posts where you're talking about like the triple bottom line, and you said that at PTYD you guys measure success based on people, planet, and profit, right? So like so like basically like financial, social, and like environmental impact. Can you tell us a little more about like what exactly do you guys do, and like how do you define success at PTYD?
Yeah, kind of speaking to your last point really quickly, if you think about it logically, if you want to make a really big impact, then you have to make a little bit of margin so you can reinvest and make more of an impact, right? It's just math.
Yeah.
So if you're not interested in making any money, then you're a nonprofit and you have to seek your funds elsewhere. But in my opinion, the best social vehicle is one that can sustain itself, right? So if you're only breaking even, meaning let's say we want to, I don't know, microfinance. Microfinance has done tremendous things in the world, but you have to make just a little bit of margin so that you can serve an additional person the next time.
Yeah.
If you're just breaking even, then you're only serving the same amount of people unless you get funds from elsewhere. But then you're vulnerable. Your mission is vulnerable to your donor base, right? So I think, that there's a lot of impact funds out there, and the impact funds that I respect that say, are you measuring social impact as well as financial impact? And I think that's tremendously important, that like we have to have our financial foundation in place so that we can continue to have a social impact, right? That's my opinion. I would be happy to be challenged on that. Then going to your question about triple bottom line, I think that's one of the most important shifts that we want to see in business and corporate culture happen in our time, in my opinion. So I don't know if y'all are familiar with Milton Friedman, but he is an economist, and he used to say, he had a paper that the only motive of a business is to create profit. Okay, I disagree with that. Yes, absolutely. Like what I just said, you have to make a profit, right? If you don't make a profit, then you can't do more than what you're currently doing. Yeah. But what are you doing with those profits, right? I mean, sure, break off your executives, break yourself off a little bit, because money is motivating to some degree. We also know that there's excess. We won't get into that. But so what does triple bottom line mean? It means you're measuring is the key word, measuring success along people, planet, and profit. So profit's easy. You have a profit and loss statement, you have a balance sheet, and you can look at the health of the business from that standpoint. Environmentally, are you carbon negative, carbon positive, carbon neutral? What are your emissions from your operations? We're trying to get a hold on measuring. We're doing something called a sourcing audit right now. So although all of our packaging is zero waste, meaning the customer doesn't throw anything away, right? They return everything to us. When we get tofu, the distributor ships it to us in plastic. So we're doing a sourcing audit of all the ingredients that we receive from our vendors, which come in plastic, which don't come in plastic. The next step will be asking the vendors, hey, is there another way for you guys to package this? Or we'll look at possibly another supplier, right? We sell not only the meals we make, but we sell add-on products. So we sell vegan nut milk, chocolate chip cookies, kids meals, kombucha, juices, stuff like that. And as our business grows, we're able to have a little bit more leverage in those relationships where we can put standards on them that like, no, we won't offer your product to our customers if it's not in a reusable bottle or if it's not compostable packaging.
Amazing.
Yeah.
That's commitment. Wow.
So that's an example of measuring along environmental lines, and measuring along people lines is, you know, something like net promoter score along customer happiness and satisfaction. Then, you know, how much community service are we doing, right? We can measure that in terms of hours and dollars. What about employee happiness, employee retention? And just employee happiness is the big one.
I remember you talking about this at the first Founder Friday when you asked John, like, you know, like, how do I think you said you have people who are working on like the idea side and people more on like the labor side, and like creating like that team dynamic where everyone is like, you know, motivated to like work together. But yeah,
exactly. I mean, whether y'all start your own companies or go work somewhere else, I mean, don't you want the higher ups to actually care that you are healthy?
Exactly.
You know what I mean? It comes back to, again, like, are your leaders long-term thinkers or short-term thinkers? I want to build a generational brand. You know what I mean? And then when I'm 80 years old, I'll be happy to invest in the kids that are going to build something better than what I spent my life building, because that's evolution, right? I think if you notice, like, all the big companies, like the Facebooks, the whatever you want to say, they all started with very good intentions, right? And then you get to such a size where even politicians start out with very good intentions, but to achieve the heights of power, you have to begin to do things to hold on to the power. But I think, hopefully, I mean, that's my wish now, and I'm saying it on camera, is that I am not such a greedy leader in my future that I can see that, okay, it's cool to invest in the next wave of change, because change is always happening. It always happens. The moment you're trying to hold on to power just for power's sake is you've corrupted yourself.
Wow, that's powerful. That's powerful.
Yeah, man.
We'll see if I'm right. These are all hypotheses.
That's a good point. So I was listening to an episode of the Thrive on Life podcast, and I was listening to your interview, and you said something, and it was such a doer thing to say. You're like, practice over knowledge.
Yeah.
I'm like, wow, because a lot of, you know, entrepreneurs, especially when they're first starting out, they get like analysis paralysis, right? And they focus so much on learning everything, and they never actually like do something, you know. And this is a DoersCast, so I'm just asking, like, when did you adopt that mindset, or was it like always like that?
No, I'm like very much on that kick right now. But I've always been a big reader. You see my desk, it's like I have books everywhere. And I have spent a lot of time in my life like reading instead of doing. Nothing wrong with that part. Like, I'm only where I'm at because I consume so much information and I create my own opinions and put things together. However, there's, you know, for every strength has a weakness on the other side of it, right? Like, every strength can become a weakness, right? So yes, it's important to gain knowledge. New tools are amazing. Like, you know, sometimes you're frustrated with a thing and then you learn a tool that you can use and you're like, oh my God, like, this just changed everything. And those things are important. But Google did such a good job of their mission to organize the world's information that we're, especially now with social media, just hit with like all this information and perspectives all the time. But the truth is that your context matters, right? Like, you grew up in a certain setting, you grew up in a certain setting, we may all relate in certain ways, but our lives are different in some very important ways.
Exactly.
Right? So there may be some advice that I'm giving that is not relevant to you. Right? And that's important. That's why critical thinking is important. Is like, yes, this applies to me and this doesn't apply to me.
Yeah.
And so I just think, like, okay, getting the information, the advice, like, people ask the same advice. listen to all the podcasts that you want, right? And then there's a Q&A, and everybody's asking the same damn question. You've heard the answer before, right? And so there's that next step, which is like, just go try what it is you can. And that's where this company was born out of. So my partner and I were very clear on the MVP concept. We weren't going to design the perfect business. We were going to just do the bare minimum to try to get it into a customer's hands, to see what they think about it, and then iterate.
That's sweet.
And I think for the majority of entrepreneurs out there, that applies to their business. If you're doing medicine or medical technology, like you should make sure the thing works before you use it. But most of us are doing consumer-facing stuff. Like, it doesn't need to be perfect from the get-go.
Yeah. Wow, that was a great last point, and this sort of leads me to my next question, which was, obviously you started here in Austin with Prep to Your Door, and I know this city culturally it's very open to like new ideas, typically accepting, and so when you launched here and you have like your MVP, right, and you're getting feedback, was launching here, would you say launching here has contributed, I guess, mostly to your success versus if you were to have started in another city? Would you have been here today?
I don't know. It depends on what the other city was, but yes, without a doubt. There's some very important things about Austin that allowed us to succeed here. But there's also like there's some more like mindset type of things, like people are very open and collaborative here, and there's some also very practical things in terms of product market fit, customer demographic, right? The thing that we're selling, there's a lot of customers for that here. If we had started in, I don't know, another place, maybe it wouldn't have fit. But I learned early on, the first thing we did was we tried to go do tabling at gyms, right? Because we're meal prep. And somebody who's obsessed with getting massive gains and putting on that next 10 pounds of muscle is not going to buy from us because they want to eat 5 square meals with 100 grams of chicken breast at every meal. I'm not going to convince them to eat a plant-based meal, right? So you learn in sales and marketing that don't waste your time and your money trying to convince people to buy your product. Find the people that already want your product. You just have to put it in front of their face. And so that's what Austin has been for us, right, as a company.
So how did you guys find those customers? Like, you said that you went to gyms and it didn't really work. What else, like, what did you do after that to like find the right people?
So not all gyms work. There were certain boutique style gyms that worked for us with certain clientele, like women going to cycle rather than guys going to lift weights. The first thing that I did, I've probably told you all this before, was I just Instagram DM'd a bunch of people. This is an example of knowledge, practice over knowledge. Like, you hear, if you listen to Gary Vee, you've heard him say it 1,000 times, like, send all the DMs that you can, right? That's all I did. Like, I would just sit there and I messaged a bunch of people like, hey, would you be interested in trying our product? All I want is your feedback. And what does that do? 0 people knew about us. Now all of a sudden 10 people knew about us. They haven't paid for it, but they know about it. And maybe they tell a friend. And I don't know, somebody ended up calling. It was like, hey, I heard you guys do meal prep. Like, what's on your menu?
Awesome.
And we got somebody to pay us.
Yeah, I feel like that's super important. Like when you're trying to find the right customer or the right audience, like something that people do is like they'll be like, oh, like, I don't know if they'll like this, I don't know if they'll like this. Like, just ask them, like, talk to them directly. Like,
totally. You
can put out surveys, you can DM them, but like, just go do it. So I think that was a really good point.
It's all of this is like less about strategy and more about mindset, right? It's like fear. We want to appear perfect, like we have it all figured out. Right? Like, my business is already thriving, right? So, but it's not, and that's okay. Like, we don't hide behind the computer or hide behind the book or the notebook. Don't hide behind the idea that you're going to have a perfect plan, so that when you announce it to the world, everybody's going to be like, wow, what a fantastic job you've done. Abandon that idea, right? And get married to the iterative process, the practice, right?
Yeah. And like with mindset, I know, like, I think you said in a podcast where it was hard for you to transition into getting into like the whole food delivery thing, because you said like, oh, like with your college thing, like you were supposed to be like at Goldman Sachs or something like that. Yeah,
absolutely.
Right? So, what was like the mindset shift that you had to go through, and like were you like really scared? Like what was that like having to like accept like, oh, this is what I really want to do?
Yeah, I mean, going home, like, now my family is like, they're like, let's go, like, let's go. They're so proud of me, right? But for the first, like, few years, it was super awkward going to Thanksgiving and all these things, because they're like, so, how's your business going? Like, what the fuck are you doing? Like, like, but I personally, at this point, feel like that's a rite of passage.
Yeah.
If you believe in your idea, or maybe it's not even the right idea yet, but if you believe in that you have what it takes to be an entrepreneur, build a business, then part of the rite of passage is that you have to believe in yourself. That is your responsibility.
Yeah.
Back to like the Thrive on Life podcast episode I was watching. You were talking about happiness, I guess, in the context of entrepreneurship and like goals within entrepreneurship, and you're pretty much saying you don't your happiness isn't contingent upon like the end goal, and it's from what I heard, or at least it seemed like it was more about the journey and like actually doing. And so I was wondering, is that more of a personal thing, or do you try to sort of embed that into like your company culture as well?
I think it's just, there's no separating the company culture from the leader's culture. You know what I mean? Like, I attracted people that resonated with similar things, me and my partner, so there's almost like no separation between whatever leadership's mindset and culture is and then the rest of the organization.
Wow.
You can't get around that. That's why they say everything is essentially like your fault or your responsibility, right?
Yeah.
That's true. That's the burden you bear. So if I see something, it also goes back to what does sustainability mean? Does sustainability just mean good for the environment? It also means our people's health, right? A sustained effort, right? And so how you read of cultures where they hire people and they try to get the absolute most out of them for 2 or 3 years, they burn and turn them.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, maybe that's a good strategy for hyper-accelerated blitz scaling growth, but that's not, like I said, it's not about right or wrong. That's not what I want to build. That's not what I want to contribute to the world.
Yeah. Good answer. Right.
All right. Yeah, so usually we'll ask everyone, like, where do you see yourself or your business in 5 years? And I know you said for your business, in 5 years you want to be like on the West Coast, and you want to be nationwide in 10 years. So I guess in terms of more like personal growth, what personal skills are you working on right now that you want to have gained in the next couple of years?
Well, this is the first time that I'm fundraising, so I'm definitely learning the skill of asking for what I want. It's like what we were talking about earlier. It's like, don't guess about what a customer may want. It's like, ask them. So it's the same thing here. It's like, hey, I would love for you to write $100,000 check. I'm asking you. You can say yes or no, but I'm gonna ask. And that's weird. It's weird. But I'm super loving it. And there's definitely an intensity to fundraising. And I think, what I've learned is that if you show up and practice, then you can't always foresee what that learning opportunity will look like. You can't perfectly plan out your life. I couldn't have predicted how we would have got here in the last 5 years.
Yeah.
I know that we'll be successful. I knew that we would be successful, but I couldn't have predicted exactly what the twists and turns were going to look like, right? And so that's why showing up and doing the work and practicing, taking it step by step, day by day is so important.
Definitely.
Because when the learning opportunity arises, you're ready for it, right? Like the thing that happened with John Henry at the panel the other day about him committing to being an angel investor, that was a surprise, right? And it never would have happened if I didn't show up and do the work, right?
Definitely.
So I don't know all the skills that. Okay, so 5 years we want to be, $100 million business. Okay, valuation. What skills and personal development is it going to take for me to take our business to that level? I have no idea, but I will show up and be ready for whatever that experience is like. I will undertake the effort.
Yeah. Exactly. All right, and then last question. This is something we ask.
Wait, can I ask this?
Oh yeah. Sure.
Okay. All right. So this is our EAA exclusive question. What is something you're doing in your life right now to be more of a doer?
Yeah. Great question. To be a doer, I have this list I make in the morning, and so I study my calendar every day, right? Something, again, knowledge I picked up from some podcast, and it was like, okay, I'm going to do that.
Yeah.
And so let me give you a good answer to this, not a bullshit answer. What am I doing to be more of a doer? I think the simple answer to that is like, what am I doing to be more of a doer? Is in my head, in my intuition, if I know that it can be done right now, do it right now.
Okay. That's a good answer.
Do it right now.
Yeah,
Right?
do it right now.
You don't have to do everything right now, but
Yeah.
if you know, everybody has an inner voice, and you know if you're pushing that voice down, right?
Yeah.
If you can do it now, do it now. Don't push it off till tomorrow.
Okay.
You can accelerate your growth at such a tremendous speed when you actually get into that space.
Yeah.
There's no doubt about that.
Yeah, I swear, I wish I had that ability where it's just like, shoot, like you just autopilot, right? But,
How are you going to get there?
man, doing.
By practicing.
Yeah, by practice.
By practicing.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, and by staying consistent, even on the days that you don't want to do it, even when you don't feel like doing it.
Yeah, and like, listen, we don't go from zero to executing on all fronts. There's a whole journey in between, right? So like, if right now you're shoving all the moments, I'm not saying that you are, if I am a 100% procrastinator, right?
Yeah.
If everything that I need to do I'm putting off till tomorrow right now, I'm not going to go from that to doing everything that I need to do immediately. So why don't I just practice doing one thing?
Yeah.
And then I'm going to be a lazy asshole for the rest of the day. And then maybe a week from now I'll be like, okay, like I've been doing one thing, like I'm going to do two things now. Like that's the journey of practice, right? Like,
Sweet.
allow yourself, and when you do that, you can be consistent, because you don't have to be perfect in your consistency, but are you putting forward effort consistently?
Yeah. That's a good point. That's a good point.
Momentum.
Yeah.
Yes. Are you building momentum?
Yeah. All right, guys. I think that wraps it up. But thank you so much for coming on our podcast, guys.
Thank you,
This
guys.
is Faiez Rana, owner of PTYD. Oh wait, do you have like a final message you want to
Final message you
say
wanna
to like people watching, people at home?
These are like college kids, mostly.
Mostly.
Yeah.
Not
mostly.
kids, college young adults.
Yeah.
My bad.
Just like
I just think that it's super important to give yourself permission to experiment a lot at that age. If you know what you want to do, like, you're very lucky. That wasn't me. Because the world is going to benefit from you developing an understanding of what it is that you have to offer the world, right? And I think only you can understand that. So I would say give yourself permission to experiment you will benefit in the long run from doing that.
All right, powerful message. But yeah, that was Faiez Rana. Thank you so much for coming on our podcast, man.
Of course.
I gotta shake your hand, bro.
Thank you guys.
Yes,
Thanks
sir.
for coming.
Thank you.
All right,
Okay.
and we'll see you guys in the next one.